Welcome. In this video, we'll be discussing how to solve linear equations with multiple steps. So before we begin, I want you to be aware of something that's going to happen and be relevant to this particular problem. So looking at this picture, this may look familiar to you if you watched my video on using the addition property of equality. And what I have is an equation, 2 plus 3 equals 5. And remember that an equation is like a seesaw that's in perfect balance. So the 2 plus 3 are balancing out the 5 perfectly. And so the idea for using the addition property of equality is that if I add a single weight to one side, like for example 7, well, in order to keep the system in balance, I need to also add the 7 to the other side. What I want you to realize is that the multiplication property of equality it's the same idea of maintaining balance, but we need to be very careful in how we do that. So for example, suppose that I take the 5 and I multiply it by 2. What have I just done? Well, I haven't just added a single weight, just some random number. What I've done is I've doubled the value of whatever was over here. So in this case, I've doubled the value of 5. Which makes 10. So if I want to maintain balance, I first need to remember what was balancing out the 5 to begin with. Well, the 2 plus 3 was really balancing out the 5. So if I want to maintain balance, then I have to double not only the 2, so I have to multiply the 2 by 2, but I also have to multiply 3 by 2. And the reason why is because, again, the 2 and the 3 were originally balancing out the 5. So when I double 5, I have to double everything that was balancing it out. And so the moral of the story is that when you have an equation, if you multiply the right side of the equation by a number, that really means you're multiplying each term on the right side by a number. So subsequently, you need to multiply each term on the left by that same number in order to maintain balance. Okay, now let's turn to the problems. So if you haven't watched my video yet on solving equations with multiple steps, this is actually the same list that I used in the previous problem. So my first step for solving linear equations is to clean up each side. So again, these steps are not necessarily in a set order, and they may not be applicable to every problem, but we're going to see if they apply to this particular problem. So the first way to clean up each side is to distribute to remove parentheses. Well, you can see in this problem I don't have parentheses. So then the next step is to clear fractions by multiplying by the LCD. Well, I definitely do have fractions here. So what that means is my first step is to find the LCD. Well, looking at my denominators, I have 7 and 2. Well, that means my LCD is going to be 14. My least common denominator. So then what I'm supposed to do, once I have my LCD, is I'm going to multiply by the LCD. So I've got 8/7 x plus 3 over 2 equals 6 over 7. And now I'm going to use the fact that we talked about over here, which is I'm going to multiply the right side by 14, which means if I'm going to maintain balance, I have to multiply each term on the left side by 14 as well. So what I do is I put each individual term in parentheses. The operation, which is plus in this case, stays outside the parentheses. And I just put a 14 in front of each term. Okay, now if I multiply this through, well, 7 and 14 are going to cancel each other out. at least the 7 is going to be canceled out. 14 divided by 7 is 2, so I'm going to cross out 14 over 7 and just write 2. And so then that means all that's left is 2 times 8x, which is 16x. 14 divided by 2 is 7, so I'm going to cross those two guys out and just write 7. 7 times 3 is 21. And then 14 and 7 again cross each other out and make 2. And I'm left with 12. So notice that in my new equation, which again is equivalent to my other equation because I've multiplied everything by the same number, I have no fractions. And so that was the whole goal of multiplying by the LCD. So then the next step in the process is to combine like terms. Well, that means I look at each side separately and combine like terms. I don't have any there to combine. And if I look at the right side, it's just 12, so I certainly don't have any like terms to combine there either. So I'm done with step 1. Step 2 is to get all the x's on one side, and they are. All my x's are here. And then step 3 is to undo to get x alone in the order of the reverse order of operations. So I've got to, in order to get x alone, I have to undo times 16, and I have to undo plus 21. So I'm going to choose to undo the plus 21 first. And I'm left with 16x, 21, and negative 21 make 0, so those are gone. 12 minus 21 is negative 9. And so I'm left with 16x equals negative 9. And now I have to undo the multiplication by 16. So I'm going to divide both sides by 16. And I'm left with x equals negative 9 over 16. Okay, I'd like you to try number 2. Pause the video and then restart it after you've given it an opportunity. Okay, so for number 2, again, our first step would be to clear out the fractions. So our LCD this time is going to be 12. So I'm going to multiply each term by 12, the right side and the left side. So I put each term in parentheses and put a 12 on the outside. I always put the 12, the number I'm multiplying by, on the left-hand side of the parentheses, by the way. So the 12 and the 3 cancel out and make 4, so we're left with 8x. The 12 and the 4 cancel out and make 3, so I'm left with plus 15. And the 12 and the 12 cancel out and make 1, so I'm left with 1. And now the next step would be to get rid of the plus 15, so minus 15 from both sides. And we're left with 8x equals negative 14. Divide both sides by 8. And I'm left with x equals negative 14 over 8, but we can reduce that. So divide top and bottom by 2, and we're left with x equals negative 7 over 4.